All right. Some questions from sermon notes that came up. Someone says, when God judges whether you're going to go to heaven or hell, does God care if you sin at all? Ooh, good question. What do you think? Does God care if we sin? Yeah, I think so. Remember the whole thing before Noah and the flood? God was grieved about humanity because humanity was kind of jerky at that time, and still now. I don't think God likes it when we sin, but the promise of the gospel is that sin has been overcome by Jesus. So whether God likes it or not, it's been overcome, which is the promise of the gospel. When Jesus is teaching his disciples, did he expect them to teach others the same lessons? What do you think? Yes, 100%. In fact, he was training them for that very purpose. We have different stories when he sends them out to practice. And then eventually they are empowered by the Holy Spirit to continue that work. So yes, he absolutely expected them to go on and teach too. We talked last week about the Sermon on the Mountain, or I referenced it in the sermon. Someone asked, when am I going to do a Sermon on the Mountain? And ironically, I kind of already have. When I was in Israel about 5 years ago, we were on a mountain called the Mountain of Transfiguration. There's a story. Are you guys familiar with Transfiguration? You remember the story? It's when Jesus goes up on top of the mountain and he starts to glow, which is kind of wild. But so the mountain where they think that happened, I was there, and there's a church on top of it, and I led communion there. What was weird about it was the church is a Catholic church, or it's Catholic monks that run it. And so for me to lead communion with the group that I was with, they asked if I would robe like their priests do, so that people didn't realize that I was not Catholic. So I'm wearing like this big fancy gold weird, like I've got a picture here, you can see it if you want to. This wild thing, but there's another picture of me, not this particular one, but you can look, and I'm wearing jeans and tennis shoes under this super fancy robe, which I thought was kind of funny. But while I didn't actually preach, I have led communion on top of the mountain, which was kind of cool. I haven't preached up there though. Who wants to open us today for a time? Kyler.
Lord God, in the midst of life, we come before you seeking your wisdom. Teach us your commandments, how we may live our lives in a way that is pleasing to you. Help us live in a way that is an example for our brothers and sisters. Show that all of humanity may one day live in harmony. Amen.
Thank you, Kyler. Okay, so when we left off last week, where did we leave Moses? Dead. Bummer, right? He climbed up a mountain. He had glimpsed the promised land and promptly died, which was a bummer for him. Who took over for him? Remember, it starts with a J, ends with an Ashua. Joshua. I don't know why that cracks me up when I do that, but it does. Yes, so Joshua takes over, and he brings the next generation of Israelites into the promised land, because what had happened to the whole previous generation? They killed them? No, they died. The new Israelites, they went in and had lots of battles, right? Yes, that's correct. Okay. Now Joshua issues a challenge to the people, asking them to choose who they are going to serve, and his own response, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Any idea how they would go about doing that, or living that out? So there may be a listing of commands that maybe they'll follow. Yes, the 10 Commandments. Okay, anybody know where we find the 10 Commandments in Scripture? Any idea which book? I'll give you a hint. We have talked about it before. Exodus. Yes, it's in Exodus. Who received the commandments from God? Moses. Wait, isn't he dead? Yeah. Well, I mean, he's definitely dead now, but yes. We left him dead on a mountain a generation ago, so today's a rare situation. Instead of jumping ahead like we normally do, we're actually going to back up. So, the 10 Commandments. If you were going to use one word to describe them, what would it be? Command, yes. How about a different one? Follow? Okay. Rules. Yeah, rules, right? They sound like rules. You guys have rules in your house? Things that you have to follow, things you have to do. What's wrong with your shoe, Lily? Oh, nice. It's odd to look back there and see someone holding a shoe. Not something you often see, but that's okay. Yeah, so that's a weird question. You think they're around to just trip us up and make us feel bad?
No.
Or are they intended for a different purpose?
Relationships with God and other people.
Oh, it's almost like you've heard me talk about this before. Good. I've taught you something. I'm glad to hear that. All right. Everybody open up to Proverbs chapter 2. If you open basically to the middle of the Bible, you will find Psalms. Proverbs is right after it. Are we out of Bibles? Bummer. You want to share there, Allie? Okay. Proverbs chapter 2. What page you got there, Kennedy? 450. Everybody got it? Got there, Kai? Are you still looking? Okay, all right. Verses 1 through 6. Kennedy, you want to read that?
So, start at my son, right?
Yep.
My son, if you accept my words and store up my commandments within you, turning your ear to wisdom and applying your heart to understanding. And if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord, and find the knowledge of God, for the Lord gives wisdom. Do I keep going?
That's good. Well, actually, finish that verse.
And from the mouth came knowledge and understanding.
Okay, so what three things does the author intend for his audience to receive in this? Did you pick up on it? It's in the first couple of verses. Actually, I like the first three. Accept the command, and if so, what will they find? Treasures. What else? Understanding. That's one of them. There's two more. What else?
Knowledge of God.
Knowledge is another one. Yep. And insight. Yes. Okay. Of these three, which one seems like it's most important? Which one do we hear the most? Understanding. We actually do hear that a lot. But I actually think knowledge is, that's weird. I asked that question strangely. I think knowledge of the Lord is the most important one of the three. So if we fear the Lord and seek the Lord's wisdom, where are we going to find it? That's the big question, right? That's kind of what we're all kind of wondering about. Like, where does this come from? So now, everyone turn back to Exodus 20. Remember that Exodus is book number 2, so fairly early on.
54.
Okay. We get it? Chapter 20. Okay, before we start to read, let's figure out where we are at. So this is after they've gone through the Red Sea. So, after the blast of God's nostrils that apparently sounded like a Red Sea sandwich. That was kind of a funny, strange comment that you made out here. Yeah. So they've left the Red Sea and they've gone to a mountain called Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is where God hangs out, apparently. And it's described as a big, lonely mountain with a lot of smoke and sometimes flashes of lightning or fire on top. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like a volcano, right? We don't know if it's a volcano. And to be honest, I don't know if there's any volcanoes in that area. There might be, but there might not be either. But it sounds an awful lot like a volcano. Because if you've ever seen images of volcanoes, especially one that's like in a slow eruption, it sounds kind of freaky, right? Would you want to go up that mountain? Probably not a real wise decision, right? It would. I'm guessing it would not end well for you. And yet that's the way it is described. Now the people are a little bit freaked out to go up into this mountain that's covered with smoke and fire. I can't say that I blame them. So they're like, hey, Moses, why don't you go up there? What do you think Moses says?
No.
Actually, he says, okay. Sometimes I don't think Moses is the smartest guy. But to his credit, God also says, Moses, come up here. So he goes up there. Okay. So we're going to read verses 1 through 11. It's kind of long, but that's where we're going to start. So I'll go ahead and read it. God spoke all of these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, and you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol, whether in the form of anything that's in heaven above, or is on the earth beneath, or is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I am the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing children for the iniquity of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who reject me. Side note, it's got kind of sound a little petty there. Like if your dad does something, you're going to catch flack over it. And so are your kids. And those kids after them too. Thanks, Dad. Okay, sorry. That was a side note. Continuing, we're at verse 6 now. But showing steadfast love to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. Oh, that's a little different. 1,000th generation. That's a lot of generations, right? So if you love me, your kids. I can't say that 1,000 times. A lot of generations. So it seems like God favors those who love God, right? Okay, cool. Verse 7. You shall not make wrongful use of the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not acquit anyone who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all of your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God, and you shall not do any work, you, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the earth and the heavens, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Okay. We got a lot of commands in there. What seems to be the focal point of this portion that we have read so far?
Love God.
Love God. What else? Keep the Sabbath holy. Yep. What else?
I shall be the only God.
I'm the only God. Yep. Okay. So we've actually covered 3 commandments already, which Austin just kind of outlaid for us. What are they? What's commandment number 1? You shall have no other gods before me. I'm God, not me. Not me. God is God. Have no other gods before me. What's the second one? That's part of it. Don't make idols, because idols are bad. And apparently not even idols of fish. I thought that was weird. Like, don't make an idol of anything that swims under the sea. Yeah. Fish are cool, but don't make them into idols. Okay. Yep. Don't make idols. Now, what else is in there, actually? There's another part of it. That's technically part of the first one, now that I think about it. What? Nope. Yeah. Don't take the names. Yeah. Don't misuse the name of the Lord. That's commandment number 2. And what's commandment number 3? I'll give you a hint. We're sitting in it right now. No, that's not technically correct. Today is the day. Sort of. Anyway. For us. Not for the Jewish people. No, Saturday. Yeah. Honor the Sabbath day. Okay, so those are the first 3. Now, who is the recipient of these 3 commandments? Or who's the focal point of these? Is it our neighbors? Or is it someone else? God. So God is the focal point of these 3. We talked about this last week. When Jesus is asked, what's the most important commandment? What did he say?
God and your neighbors.
Well, the first one is love God, right? So Do you think this is why our first 3 commandments are all aimed at our relationship with God? Yeah, okay. Now, who are the other 7 aimed at? Others, right. Because what's the second part? Love your neighbor. Yes, right. Okay. What has God done for the people? We hear this in like verse number 2. What has God done for the people at this point? Brought them out of Egypt, brought them across the Red Sea. And what was the promise that God had made many generations before to a guy named Joseph and his descendants? Or even before that? Yeah, I'm going to bring you to the promised land. I'm going to watch out for you, and it's going to be good. Now, let's continue with verses 12 through 17. Reagan, would you be so kind as to read that for us?
Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land that the Lord your God has given you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit I don't know how to say that.
Adultery.
You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
Okay. We already talked about this. Let's see. You're seeing a moment when my train of thought has gone off the rails, and I have no idea why I'm asking questions that I have printed here. It's always fun. Okay, so we know that the first commandments are aimed at our relationship with God. And who do these ones seem to be aimed at? Our neighbors, yes, how we interact with one another. So does it seem like these various commandments are giving some guidelines for ways that we should live our lives? Yeah. And if we do these things, what kind of life is that between us and God and between us and our neighbors? You think it's perfect? Maybe, if we follow it like absolutely. We never really pull that off though, do we? So for instance, let's take murder. That's true. Yeah, anybody killed their siblings lately? How are you two doing? I just saw an eye roll there, Sam. You haven't killed her today. Now, yesterday was a different story. And the day's not over yet. The day is young. But, okay, so if we are not murdering each other, which is probably a good thing, and we're getting along pretty well, there's a word for this. Living together, it starts with an H. Harmony. Living together in harmony with one another, amongst our neighbors and between us and God. And this is a good thing. This seems to be what God intends. So, if we do these things, if we follow the commands to the absolute letter and follow them perfectly, do we earn anything? No, we don't. So then why do we have them? Because God told us to. Okay, class is over. So you're right. God did give us these commands as a way to live in harmony. And if we know that we can't pull them off perfectly, why do we even bother? What do you think? Why do you follow the rules at home? Because you get in really big trouble? Okay. Does life tend to go a little smoother when we follow the rules? Yes, typically. Now, do we always like it? No. You know what I really don't like? There's a rule that says I have to pay taxes. Taxes suck. But that's the rule. And if I don't pay them, they'll make me pay more money or throw me in jail, which would be bad. How did we get on tax evasion? This is a weird little tangent that we've gone on. But yeah, so we live in harmony. And why else might the people want to respond to this listing of commands that God has given them? Why would they want to follow them? what sensibility should they have based on what God has done for them?
They've killed like half the population of Egypt. They've brought them out of slavery.
So God's done a lot for them, right? Didn't go so well for the Egyptians, but God has done a lot for them. So how should they feel towards God? Gratitude. They should feel gratitude. And because of gratitude, that's why they should try and live the life that God seems to intend for them. Okay, now, think back. Where is Moses when this conversation is happening? Not dead. He's up on top of the flaming mountain that might be a volcano, right? Yes, hoping he does not fall in lava, because that would not go well for him. I hear the thundering birds. No. That was a look of sheer terror for a second. They're just like, oh. Is that your sister? And all of a sudden she's like, oh, the other direction. All the little siblings. Still coming. Still coming. Still coming. Okay. Sounds like it's getting quiet now. Alrighty. So Moses is up the mountain. Where are the rest of the people? On the ground. Now, there's all this smoke and fire, and apparently the voice of God sounds like thunder, and there's lightning. It's described as somewhat freaky. Do you think the people are just standing there like, this is wonderful? They do think Moses is dead, actually. How do you think that the people feel collectively? Are they like, oh, everything's spectacular? Or they're like, there's some freaky stuff going on out there? Right. They are kind of freaked out. All right, let's read verses 18 through 21. Ali, will you read that for us?
When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain smoke, they trembled in fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, speak to us yourself and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us or we will die. Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sin. The people remained at a distance, while Moses approached the darkness for God.
Okay. So wait a minute. Wasn't Moses up the mountain? How's he talking to the people?
No idea.
Did he come back down? It seems like he came back down, right? And then he's going to go right back up again. Like, I feel bad for Moses. He's going up and down this mountain, seemingly. How are the people acting? Or how do they seem to be? They're scared. They're like, Moses is like, hey, you guys want to come up here? And they're like, no, dude. We're going to stay down here. You go ahead and go up there. We're going to stay down here away from the lightning and thunder and crazy weirdness that is up the mountain. Okay. When you picture the Ten Commandments, what do you see? What mental image do you see?
A stone slab that's humongous.
A humongous stone slab. Just a single stone slab? Two curved tablets, yes, that are probably about this tall and about this wide, with a lovely curve on one side, perfectly symmetrical on the other side still, right? With writing on them? Yes. That is what I also picture when I think about the Ten Commandments. But have we heard anything about stone tablets yet? No, we haven't. Anybody know where he actually gets them from?
He goes to the mountain for the second time. God tells him the commandments, and then he tells him to pick up the stone, and then he agrees with him.
Oh, kind of not. Before we get to the stone tablets, God's going to ramble for a while. Have you noticed this, that sometimes God gets long-winded? Maybe we see where Moses gets it from. Learns it from God. Zip ahead to chapter 24. So God's talking for like 3 chapters. And we're going to go to verse 12. So chapter 24, verse 12. Might help if I was in the right chapter. So during this time, Moses has gone up and down the mountain a couple more times. Poor guy. He must be in really good shape, because he can climb this mountain like nobody's business. All right, 12 through 18. Quentin, will you read that for us, please? Chapter 24, starting at verse 12.
The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and stay here, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and commandments I have written for their instruction." And Moses set out with Joshua his aide. And Moses went up to the mountain of God. He said to his elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you." Aaron and Hur are with you, and anyone that has dispute can go to them. When Moses went up the mountain, the cloud covered it, and the glory of the Lord settled on Mount
Sinai.
For 6 days. The cloud covered the mountain, and on the seventh day the Lord called to Moses from within the cloud to the Israelites. The glory of the Lord was a consuming fire on top of the mountain. Then Moses entered the cloud as he went up the mountain and stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
Okay, so this is a bit of a weird narration. God's basically like, Moses, come up here. And Moses is like, okay, Joshua, you come with me. You other two dudes, you stay down there, and if anything happens, everybody can talk to them. And they go partway up the mountain, and then this cloud settles on the mountain. And we hear it's there for a week, so it sounds like Moses and Joshua are just like halfway up the mountain. Like, there's a cloud there. Guess we're hanging out. And then pretty soon God's like, come on in. And then they go into the cloud. And how long are they up there? Like a month and a half, right? So there's a long thing going on here. Now, does Moses have the tablets yet? No. Okay. But before we have the tablets even, we need to have a place to put them. Because he can't just carry them around all the time, right? We have to have some sort of container to put them. What do you think would be a good container for the tablets? Has anyone ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark? Yes. Do you know what the Lost Ark is? Close. What was it? It's like this big box, right?
Yeah.
This gold-covered box. What do you think they put in the box? What are we talking about? The tablets. Yes, the tablets were there. So God's basically like, before I give you the tablets, you need to make a box. So he gives them instructions on how to make a box. And it's a fancy box. So God's like telling Moses all this stuff. Like, he's got a lot to remember. Maybe that's why he takes Joshua with him to write it all down so he can help remember. But so he's going to make a box for the tablets. But if we're going to have the box, we also have to have a place to keep the box, right? Where do you think would be a good place to keep the box that keeps the tablets? A sanctuary. Close. What's another word for a sanctuary? Tabernacle. Yeah, we talked about that last time, didn't we? Tabernacle is like this special tent. It's basically like a church tent, essentially. So God gives Moses instructions on how to make the tabernacle. And he has Joshua write it all down. Because this is fancy and very descriptive. And remember, Moses is up on this mountain for a month and a half with no food, so, he's probably really hungry and has a hard time remembering. But this is all going on. This whole deal takes quite a while, like 8 chapters. So a long time. Finally, in chapter 31, so like 6 chapters from now, God finally gives Moses the 2 tablets. Who writes on the tablets? Who do you think? God does. The finger of God carves it. And I'm sure it looked just like this. Okay. Now, how long has Moses been up the mountain? 40 days and 40 nights, like a month and a half, right? What do you suppose is going on down the mountain with all the people? Are they just sitting there patiently waiting, like, he'll be back soon. We'll just sit here. It's fine. They did not leave. They were still there. Okay, so they're probably not just like, we're going to be patient, right? Do they think they get a little restless? Think they get a little stupid? Because they're people, right? And people are stupid. People are wonderful, but people are also really stupid. Okay, so they're like, well, we don't know what happened to Moses. He's been gone for a really long time. There's fire and lightning and smoke up there. He's probably dead. So we don't know what else to do, but we need to have an image of God so that we know who to worship, right? Because we know that God is like out there somewhere, but we need to have an image so we know how to, so we know what to worship. So what do?
They burn all, they melt all of their jewelry, and Aaron forms this into a shepherd.
Yes. They take all of their gold earrings, because apparently the dudes all had bling, and they all wore earrings, and they melt them down, and they form a golden calf, which they think is the image of God. So they're not trying to supplant God. They just want to see what God looks like. What?
So they make it themselves?
They make it, well, Aaron, who's Moses' brother, like forms it. But yes, they make it. So they make this golden calf as an image of God. What was commandment number 1?
Don't idolize them.
Don't make idols. Moses hasn't even brought them the 10 commandments yet, and they're already breaking one of them. That's a good question. In many different ancient religions, the cow was a sacred image. I don't know why. Cows are kind of ugly, if you ask me. And I grew up on a dairy farm. Yeah, so they make this image of a cow. Do you think God is pleased? I mean, they're literally breaking one of the commandments. What? Yes. Based on what we have seen from God so far, and admittedly, this is not a good look for God, but how does God respond? I think we should just kill them, Moses, and I'll start over with you. Have we heard this sort of thing before? Who? Noah. Yes, we've heard it before. Do you think, but Moses is like, whoa, dude, slow your roll. Let me go down and talk to them. Now, does Moses know what's going on down below? No, he's not clairvoyant. He has no idea what's going on down there. But he comes walking back down, and now he's got the tablets. He hasn't built the box yet, but he's got the tablets. So he's walking down carrying the tablets, and he witnesses all the strange stuff that the Israelites are doing. And do you think he has a reaction? Yes. Do you remember what it is, 8th graders?
Yes. He grinds up the tablets and puts them in water or soup or something. Makes everybody drink some.
Yes. He takes the tablets, he breaks them, he grinds them into powder, puts it in the water, and makes everyone drink it. And yes, some people die. A lot of people get sick because they're drinking stone. That doesn't seem real healthy. And some of them die. In addition, he also takes the golden calf or the golden cow, grinds that up, and that's part of the slurry as well. That sounds like a delicious smoothie, let me tell you. Rock and gold. Ew. Yeah, not good. Okay, now Moses is understanding why God is cranky. Clearly, he too is cranky. Moses and God banter back and forth for a while until chapter 34, when God's like, hey, remember I gave you those tablets and you broke them? Smooth move, dude. Yeah, basically, come back up here. Let's try this again. So Moses goes back up again. Only this time, God tells him, this time you carved the tablets. Why?
Because he broke them off.
He broke them the first time. He's like, hey, you got a little hissy fit and you broke the tablets. This time you're going to carve them. So instead of the finger of God, now it's Moses with a chisel. Chink, chink, chink,
God
chink,
can't
chink.
say anything. He does not kill them.
He didn't kill them.
I know.
Yep. How long do you think this round 2 took? Another 40 days. Yeah, which is a long time. So now they have them again. Okay, gosh, we covered a lot of ground. How do we know the difference between right and wrong? People teach us, right? Yeah. Do we always listen to them? No. You ever had a time where you're like, I know this isn't right, but I'm going to do it anyway? Yeah. Can you think of an example there, Maddox? Yeah, I mean, you answered that pretty quickly. You got one, Quentin? What's an example of a time when you're like, I know this is wrong, I'm going to do it anyway?
Like throwing a ball as hard as I can at somebody.
Oh, did you hit him in the head?
Yeah.
Did you laugh?
No, I didn't laugh.
Did you want to?
I might have.
You think you might? Did they laugh?
I looked around.
If you drilled them in the head, I'm guessing they didn't laugh. Yeah, okay. I can think of a time, I was about your guys' age, roughly, and my older brother and I and a friend of his went down the road from where I grew up to an abandoned farm place where there was a house. And there were apple trees. And so we started picking up apples off the ground. And those apples pretty quickly started getting thrown through windows. Now, did I know better?
Yeah.
Did I do it anyway? Yeah. Yes. And then, foolish me, I go out and start talking about it. So we got in a lot of trouble because there were consequences, right? I knew it was wrong. It was wrong. We did it anyway, and there were consequences. Do you see where I'm going with this? Do I see where I'm going? I don't know where I'm going with this. But we know the difference between right and wrong. Sometimes we do what we know is probably not good. That's just the nature of things. But do rules help us live with one another? Or boundaries, maybe we could say it that way? Do they help us live in harmony with one another? How do they do that? Like, what was wrong with you throwing a ball at someone's head? Like, what could potentially be an issue with that? They could die? They could. I mean, if you hit them in the temple, they could get a concussion and die. It's unlikely.
It wasn't a hard, it was like a dodgeball.
Okay. But what if they were close to the wall and it hit them and they shot their head back and cracked their head on the wall and got a concussion and died? I mean, this is dark. I'm getting kind of dark here, right? Like, I realize that I am. But that would be bad, right? I'm glad that did not happen, because that would be bad. But it could, right? Okay, so what about, let's think about some of the different commandments. Like, don't steal. Why not?
Because it's someone else's thing.
It's someone else's stuff. Yeah. What if you like walked into someone's office or house or something, and you saw a ring there, and it was a really pretty ring, and you could tell it was really old. It's so old, it's pretty, but it's really old. Like, no one would care, it's old. I'm just going to take that. I'm going to walk away. Why would that be bad?
So that means a lot to that person.
It could mean a lot to that person. Yeah, it could have a lot of sentimental value. It's their stuff, right? So stealing is bad. We've already determined that throwing balls at people's heads is bad. I'm not going to leave you alone on that one. Yeah. Are there some rules that are hard to follow? Think about it. I mean, you've all told me that, yeah, sometimes you don't follow the rules. Where's some that you're like, I don't like this rule, I'm not going to pay attention to it?
Walking in the hallway.
What in the hallway?
Walking in the hallway.
Walking in the hallway? How come?
I think it's stupid. Like,
You want to get there in a hurry, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, like, why should you have to walk?
Because there might be people in the children.
You could run into somebody,
Yeah.
and maybe their head would hit the wall, and they would get a concussion and die.
Or the ground.
I'm kind of stuck on that, aren't I? Yeah. Okay. That's a good example. What are some others? What are some other things? Like, this rule is stupid, and I don't like having to
If
follow
we're
it.
done with everything at school, why can't we be on our phones? We're done with homework, I finished books and stuff.
yeah,
We got everything done and we won't let me use them.
Why won't they? Do they have a good answer for it? I mean, that's like that, honestly, half the time when I'm done with stuff, I'm staring at my phone too.
they just don't want to let you have fun.
They don't want to let you have
They're
fun.
worried that people will get on their phones before they're done with work.
Oh,
So no one can do it.
so they want to have no temptation. Interesting. Kennedy.
When we have, like when we're at lunch, usually we go to the bathroom and stuff, we have to hold up a number the whole time when we have to go to the
Yeah.
bathroom.
Jonathan's like, give me 5. And then we have to be like,
Yeah, it's so weird. You have to go to the bathroom, you have to hold up number one. And then they take forever to call on you. You're like,
and they're like,
over here. And then they're like, and then they like separate you. You're like when you want to go to the bathroom and like someone else is on the table, they're like, you over there, and you over there.
That's weird.
our lunch is
It's like we're in preschool.
Like you're in preschool. I gotta pee. You ever do this? No? Okay, that'd be weird. Sorry. Think back to when Abraham and God were talking. Do you remember how God told Abraham early on when he told him about the promise in the first place, that not only is Abraham going to be blessed, but all of the world is going to be blessed through him? Do you remember this from like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5-ish weeks ago? It was a while ago. God says to Abraham, I'm going to bless you and the entire world's going to be blessed through you. Any idea what that might have been referring to? Any idea?
Does that mean we're all descendants of Abraham?
Well, remember the song? The song says so. The father Abraham had many sons, and I am one of them, and so are you. So let's all praise the Lord. Right hand, left foot. Right foot. Yes. I'll give you one big hint. What are we talking about today? The commandments. Okay. What is the other big thing that maybe bless the entire world that would be important to us Christians on Sunday? Jesus, who was Jewish, right? And the Jewish people were the descendants of Abraham, right? Yeah. So Jesus is the big one. Church answer. But the other one is actually establishes through the commands and the commandments that are given to Moses. God says, I'm going to make you a nation of priests. Which sounds kind of weird. What do priests do? You're like me, kind of different denomination, but yeah. So what do I do? Preach about what? God, Bible, stuff, Jesus, stuff. Yep. Okay. Do you think that the priests, do they live their lives in a way that's an example? Hopefully. Not all. Yeah, and I have my moments. Lord knows. But their life is intended to be an example for other people. So if God says to the Israelites, or the Jewish people, I'm going to make you a nation of priests, what does that sound like?
You're going to be examples for the world.
Going to be examples for the world. And examples of what?
How we should live our lives.
How we should live our lives. And the commandments show us how to live our lives. How?
Fear God and...
Wow. I don't know what's going on back there. Somebody's cranky. Remember we talked about the commandments show us how to live our lives in harmony with who? And? Okay. So, God actually intended the people to follow the commandments to show an example to the rest of the world.
Sorry.
What's funny?
The kind of screaming is still in my head.
Okay. I was like, what? What did I do? So as an example for the rest of the world of how to live in harmony. Okay. We already did that. We already did that. Okay. Wow, they are just really lined up like that. What's the most dramatic thing that we talked about today? Other than
Kids.
They eat cement.
that they eat cement, not exactly cement, but yeah. That Moses has. There does seem to be a whole lot of death as consequence, doesn't there? So what do we make of that? And legitimate question. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because this is kind of hard stuff, right? Like, you do this wrong, I'm going to strike you dead. And how long did it take them to do something wrong? Literally as they were getting the command, right? Yeah. So I don't know. I don't even know what to tell you. What do we learn from that?
He taught us how to make an Egyptian sandwich and make a cement stew.
Some men do. Well, Moses technically did. Don't do anything wrong. Don't screw up. I mean, yeah, don't screw up or you die. Which is a rough teaching, a hard teaching, and none of us pull that off, do we? No. So what else do we hopefully know about God? Not necessarily from this story, but what do we know about God in terms of us following the rules? He kills us most of the time?
Yeah, he does. Almost every story you've given us, he kills humans. True. He's a murderous God. Sorry.
It kind of seems that way, doesn't it? But does the story end here? Does the story go on?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go all the way back to the beginning. Well, no, week 2. God made the world, which the epitome of God making the world was what? That child, perhaps?
You should start screaming back.
Let's not do that. Because we're bringing this in for a landing now. So God makes humanity and calls us very good, right? Yeah. And then and then there's this whole garden, and there's like this snake, and there's an apple, and there's an issue.
I wonder if the snake's what started off.
It sort of seems like it, right? It's a conspiracy. Snakes are bad.
Why was there a snake in the garden and no other animals?
Well, there were other animals there.
In the garden?
Yes, there were. Remember what the punishment was supposed to be for even touching the apple? Death. Like the second you touch it, you're going to die. Did they die right away? No. So the consequence was delayed, right? So already even in that first story, we begin to see God showing mercy. Now they did die, yes, they did. And there have been consequences as well. But does God continue to show mercy? At times anyway. Yeah, sometimes. Depending on who we're talking about, right? If you're an Egyptian, it doesn't seem that way. But, yes. I don't really have a good way to respond to that. Because these are good questions. These are good, observations. But so far, God seems kind of rough and difficult to deal with. Yeah?
We were taught in Sunday school. We were just taught, God is the best, and he doesn't kill anyone, and he's like, yeah, cool. Yeah. Yeah, follow God. Nice. And then we come here, and then you're like, yeah, he kills everyone.
Well, I don't think that God kills everyone.
He kills everyone that's against him.
It seems that way so far.
We've stopped passages.
I like the Jews consider it better. There's less murdering people.
We should go to our fifth grade.
There's less murdering. Yeah. Okay. Let's think about it this way. So remember that these stories were written down countless generations after they happened, right? So it's a story that gets told, that gets told, that gets told, that gets told, that gets told. Have you ever heard the expression that history is written by the winners?
Yeah.
Have you heard this before? What's that mean?
I think it's just written by those people that so if me and Allie fought each other or something, she writes that she won and it passed on her thing, and I write that I won or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it can just written in a good way. I don't know what's exactly.
Okay, let's escalate this a little further. Say you and Allie were really going after each other, and you killed Allie. Can Allie write down what happened?
No.
Okay, can you?
Yes.
And you're probably going to write to make you look good, right?
I didn't kill her, she killed herself.
Yeah. So think about it this way. If your culture is the one that's recording this stuff, and you're still around, you're going to probably think, my God is on my side, right? And my God showed judgment on everybody else, and that's why they're dead. That tends to, as we look back through a lot of historical writing, not just the Bible, but through a lot of historical writing, that's the type of stuff we see. So God's going to show favor on us, right? Maybe not on everybody else. I'm not saying that's right, but that tends to be what happens. So I think that's why we have such a harsh view of God so far. And it is harsh. It is.
Do you think God's in every religion? It's just like they call them different stuff and they just like, cause, well, like I get that not every religion, but like there's a lot of things that in different religions, like the Epic of Gilgamesh is like in Buddhism and Hinduism, but that's Noah's Ark. So technically, like, what is God?
So do I think that God is actually God for everyone? They just call God something different? I don't know.
I think.
Admittedly, I don't know.
So I gotta be nice to every religion. But if you are like not nice to Buddhism and God, you'd be like, you just mess up.
Worshiping.
Worshiping the same God, just we have like different stories and different traditions and stuff.
Do you think that's possible?
Yeah. It's my favorite possibility.
I actually really like that possibility too. That we're all viewing things through a different lens. Some good, some not so good. Clearly, our view's got some issues in it, right? Yeah, because we have a God who seems to murder a lot of people. And that's troublesome. And it's okay if you find that troublesome. I find it troublesome. And I don't have a good response to it. Okay? We're running out of time here. So, but thanks for bringing, those are honest responses, and I appreciate those. Tells me you're actually thinking about it, because there's some messed up stuff in there. Have we talked about the talking donkey yet?
What? You said like,
Just wait, we'll get there.
we could talk about it too.
Well, we don't focus in on it, unfortunately. Yeah, there's a story about a donkey that starts talking. Because the guy's beating on him, and he's like, why are you hitting me?
Oh, you told us that. This guy was like with the donkey, and
like,
then the donkey.
There's an angel over there. You're hitting me with a stick? Okay. Hey, God, thanks for this day. Amen. All right, let's go.
Okay, yeah, let's go.